Corporal punishment is not a justifiable way to discipline children. Introduction. Everyone has either been physically punished, observed a physical punishment, or administered this form of discipline on a child at some point. Corporal punishment is a very common form of discipline in households throughout the United States. Many of us had accepted this form of punishment as part of our culture and consider it a reasonable way to discipline children. However, there are also a great deal of people who don't believe in using corporal punishment and refuse to use it on their children, as they may find it abusive or harsh. So should physical force be a justifiable form of punishment on children for misbehavior? Corporal punishment should not be a justifiable form of discipline because it increases aggression and mental health problems in children, damages the parent-child relationship, and is ineffective for permanently changing behavior. Background. Corporal punishment has been a disciplining method in the household for many years. According to Judy Rollins, the author of Spanking Revisited, studies indicate that about 80% of children around the world are physically punished for misbehavior. Parents have used corporal punishment to discipline their children for decades, especially in the United States. However, researchers and psychologists didn't start studying the effects of physical punishment until the past 50 years. During this time, researchers have gathered over 75 studies worth of data, which helped foster a debate about whether or not corporal punishment should be a justifiable form of discipline in the home. While researching the advantages and disadvantages of corporal punishment on children's health and behavior, many psychologists have found that physically punishing children does more harm than good. Arguments against corporal punishment. One reason corporal punishment is harmful to children is that it increases aggression and mental health problems in children. Psychologist and Professor Elizabeth Jershoff and Professor Andrew Grogan-Kaler examined data from the US and other countries and concluded that the more children were spanked for misbehavior, the higher their risk of becoming aggressive during childhood or adulthood. One Viewpoint article suggests that corporal punishment teaches the wrong, specifically about physical violence. Spanking young children whose cognitive abilities are still developing can teach them that violence is an acceptable way to deal with displeasure and solve problems. Corporal punishment also causes psychological harm to children because the more children are spanked, the more likely they will engage in antisocial behavior, especially as adults. Jershoff and Grogan-Kaler. Also, spanking, unlike other non-physical forms of punishment, can also shame the child for their misbehavior and for the way they handled the pain of their punishment. This is especially true if children give in to the pain and allow themselves to cry or show their discomfort. Studies have also found links between corporal punishment and depression or low self-esteem in adolescence and adulthood. Barwick. These potentially harmful consequences to child development are important reasons to consider corporal punishment as an unjustifiable form of discipline. Not only does corporal punishment potentially lead to mental health problems later in a child's life, but it can also damage the relationship between parent and child. Parents will more likely help their children adopt appropriate behavior patterns through positive guidance. Children learn to trust their parents at birth. However, physical punishment can very easily undermine trust. Research. Children will also learn to be afraid of their parents, which can cause them to build a protective shield against not only their parents, but other relationships as well. Children learn to mistrust the motives of others and become more sensitive to potential threats in social situations. How well a child trusts their own parents plays a major role in their personal development and their likelihood of building new relationships with others later in life. Another reason not to justify corporal punishment focuses on whether or not it is as effective as or more effective than other forms of discipline. While spanking a child may appear to prevent him/her from misbehaving, it is only effect in the short term and may never guarantee a permanent change in behavior. Children more effectively learn appropriate behavior by moral internalization. This means parents must use disciplining strategies that allow the child to reflect on his or her mistakes and teach the child that they are capable of controlling their own behavior. If children are allowed to reflect on their misbehavior and internalize the right morals, they will better understand how to properly behave as individuals. Barwick. Some of the reasons children may suffer mental health problems later in life center on the possibility that those children have to rely heavily on consequences to know whether their behavior was right or wrong because they did not have the opportunity to internalize the moral values associated with appropriate behavior. While spanking is a faster, more convenient way to stop misbehavior, the child does not get to reflect on what they had done because reflection only lasts as long as the child suffers their punishment. While spanking feels so unpleasant that the child fears repeating their misbehavior, they may not spend much time thinking about what they did once the pain goes away. Even if a child knows they will be punished in advance, the fear of the unpleasant punishment will render him or her unable to reflect on the misbehavior. Corporal. As mentioned above, corporal punishment is more likely to shame a child for their misbehavior than any other form of discipline. This can possibly lead the child to believe that he or she is a bad person, which may motivate more misbehavior in the future. If misbehavior escalates, so will the amount of spanking, which can lead the parent to cross the line between discipline and child abuse. Barwick. Because it does not encourage children to reflect on their misbehavior or internalize moral values, corporal punishment has no long-term effects and may elicit more negative outcomes than positive ones for proper behavior in children. Arguments for corporal punishment. Some supporters of corporal punishment may argue that it is different from child abuse in the sense that it causes pain rather than injury to the child. Yes, intention of corporal punishment is to inflict pain, rather than injury, which can make the child for the idea of repeating his/her misbehavior. However, some parents can cross the line between discipline and child abuse very easily if they are raising more difficult children or become too angry with their children for behaving inappropriately. If a parent administers corporal punishment in a harsh enough manner that it is remotely abusive, the child can be at a high risk for mental health problems in the future as a result. Punishing children harshly for misbehavior is simply not worth risking their development and psychological health. Another possible argument by supporters of corporal punishment is that a child will only learn from bad behavior through bad consequences, which makes corporal punishment the only truly effective way to discipline children. In some cases, individuals will have to learn from their mistakes the hard way. However, because of the pain a child experiences when physically punished, this is a degrading discipline method because it does not involve giving the child an opportunity to make up for their mistakes. Corporal. Spanking teaches children what is wrong, but not as effectively what is right in terms of behavior. There are other more effective disciplining strategies parents can use with children who misbehave that are not as unpleasant and give children opportunities to make up for what they have done wrong and internalize more appropriate behaviors in the future. For example, a child makes a big mess in a friend's house, scattering objects all over the floor and knocking items off shelves. Her parents may tell her to clean up the mess she made. Her mother or father can say, "You need to pick up all the items you left in the floor and put them back where they belong. I think so and so would appreciate you doing that." The child may not like the idea of cleaning up her mess, but as she picks everything up, she begins to view this task as apologetic and takes time to reflect on her behavior as she is completing her task. When she sees that her friend or parent's friend appreciates her effort and is pleased with her, the child will be even more likely to internalize the moral values that guide her to more appropriate behavior patterns. Some other ways parents can help children change their behaviors include giving them calm-down tools to increase cooperation and self-confidence, and getting the children involved in the process of problem-solving so they can internalize and practice problem-solving skills. This does not mean that the child is getting away with his or her misbehavior. These are disciplining methods that encourage children to do better rather than making them feel worse for their mistakes. ENS. The child will more easily learn what to do as well as what not to do. Conclusion. To wrap it all up, corporal punishment is an extremely popular form of discipline at home. However, it should not be a justifiable form of discipline because it models aggression, damages parent-child relationships, and leads to mental health problems for children later in life, and it has no long-term, positive effects on behavior. Parents and future parents must consider the negative consequences of corporal